Good afternoon once again. I'd like to thank you all for joining our Patient Centricity Improving Study Performance Through Communication webinar. Today, Senior Pharmica Consultant Amiri Settles is going to walk us through a presentation and then field any questions that you all have, but please feel free to use the GoToMeeting interface to ask questions at any time during the presentation, and I'll try and find a good pause point to get those in as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Amiri.
Thank you, Billy. As Billy said, my name is Amiri Settles. I'm a Pharmica consultant, and I'm currently involved in many aspects of clinical trial patient engagement, from strategic prioritization to execution. I have 15 years of life science experience in pharma, IT project management, business analysis, and process improvement. Billy B., our moderator, is a clinical systems and marketing expert. We also have Eric Lake, who's worked in biopharma for over 20 years as an engineer, consultant, including some of the world's biggest biopharma companies on a variety of projects. We also have Jerry Von Blon, who has significant project management experience in R&D resource planning and management, and Matt Hendricks, who's worked in life sciences for nearly 20 years in IT, informatics, and R&D portfolio planning. So I'll start with a quick review of today's agenda. So we'll start by talking about why patient engagement matters, what research sponsors should understand from patients, what patients want to know from research sponsors, what sponsors are doing today to communicate with patients, and then finally how we move the needle to facilitate better communication. So let's start with a definition of patient-centered care. This definition has been provided by the Institute of Medicine, and I like this definition. It's a good one to include in our thinking as a set of simple values to carry along as we apply patient-centered practices to clinical trials. So here are a few reasons why patient engagement matters. Because of our awareness limitations, because it's important to patients, and because it offers many opportunities to do better. So what exactly are our awareness limitations? Well, here are a few, and they really can contribute to our failure to see opportunities. Blindness due to lack of attention is really our tendency not to see what we're not looking for, even when we're looking directly at it. And blindness to change is like a failure to notice obvious changes in the environment, especially when they occur gradually. And the inability to always focus on the right things really pertains to our tendency to focus too much on particular events and too little on others, sometimes when they're, or because they're occurring concurrently. So, for example, consider a study with adherence issues related to packaging. Later it's discovered that the color-coded instructions aren't being picked up by patients because of their inability to see certain colors, and this is disease-specific. So it's not a symptom that's being studied, so no one's aware of it. And this is an awareness limitation that could have been overcome by communicating with patients earlier. So here's another example. So for those who haven't seen this dancing bear awareness video, it challenges the viewer to count the number of passes made by the team with the white t-shirts. And after watching the video, most people feel really pleased with themselves for getting the correct answer, 13 for the number of passes. However, are surprised to learn that they've missed something big that's going on at the same time. A moonwalking bear has entered the video and danced across the screen without them notice. So many people require multiple views just because of unbelief at missing this. But this is really what we're trained to do. We're trained to see certain events, and consequently, we may miss others of equal or greater importance. And again, this is what we can address by communication with study stakeholders, especially patients and caregivers. The second reason patient engagement matters is that patients want to be engaged. So this is a quote from a researcher and clinical trial participant that appeared in a C-Script article, and I found this particularly poignant. So I'll read it just for emphasis, but a patient's view. As a patient, you really don't care that someone didn't dot an I or care that they you care that they sat and listened and cared. And patients don't care about the paperwork. They don't care about database locks. They care about the interaction. In 2013 and 2014, the Schwartz Center conducted a series of consumer focus groups to learn how patients think about compassionate care and what language they use and what aspects of compassionate care are most important to them. And the patients who responded gave the following as reasons: receiving information clearly in a way that is understandable, being involved in decisions about care, being listened to attentively, being treated as a person, not just as a disease, being respected, and that goes for the patient and their family. The next reason patient engagement matters is that it creates opportunities in terms of business value and measurable improvement, to reduce time by faster study recruitment because patients can find studies. They can be screened, they can be consented. It provides opportunities to reduce costs by designing better protocols, reducing unnecessary visits and unnecessary procedures. So research has shown that only 7 of 100 known patients in an average patient pool actually go on to complete the trial from pre-screening, and furthermore, about 30% drop out on average across over the course of the clinical trial. So it provides opportunities to reduce dropout, obviously, but it also provides opportunities to reduce amendments, which can also take time and money. So according to Tufts research, substantial amendments can be very expensive, and the median cost as high as $140,000 for phase 2 and over $500 for phase 3. You know, these substantial amendments can cost money. They can also really add time, on average 3 months or longer, compared to protocols that don't have any amendments. It also creates opportunities for organizational improvement through leadership. A 2000 National Business Ethics Survey has shown that 90% of employees value leaders with integrity as highly as they value income. A 2004 study by the National Association of Colleges and Employers found that when employees choose an employer, they place most of the weight in integrity and ethical business practices. So obviously this is something that we should be aware of. There are also correlations between values and financial performance. For example, there's evidence that being a values-driven company and promoting ethical behavior really pays off. A DePaul University study, for example, has shown that companies that are ethical and committed to their values seem to have higher sales and revenues. And they showed that it's easier for leaders who are perceived to be ethical to achieve investor confidence and attract investment capital. And I can just tell you, having worked on patient focus in organizational transformation, it really is something that motivates people and is exciting. So here are a few things to understand from patients. What are the study participation perceptions and drivers? What are the health and social impacts of disease so we can design studies in a more patient-focused way? How does disease treatment administration actually impact their daily lives? And what are the information needs of patients, the providers, and the disease community as a whole? Because clinical research or clinical researchers really have an opportunity to lead in this space. If we're going to increase trial participation and retain patients, we really need to know why patients do it. For example, to improve the lives of others or to advance medicine are frequently given reasons for clinical research participation, along with to improve their disease condition, according to surveys conducted by CScript. And knowing from patients the drivers for study participation can really help reach patients and then build studies that are patient-focused and they'll actually want to complete. We also need to understand how disease impacts patients socially, because these social challenges affect the patient's ability to participate in studies. So it's important to know that the disease impacts all impacts of life, including being able to take care of self and maintain relationships. There are also emotional impacts of living in social isolation, Family members becoming frustrated with the patient's inability to do things maybe they used to be able to do. There's fear that people who the patients love the most will have to take care of them for the rest of their lives. There's loss of friends due to lack of mobility, and just a general lack of understanding on part of family and friends as to the physical and emotional toll the disease is taking on them. So this is really something only patients fully know, only patients feel. And these are just some select examples that I took from the FDA Voice of Patient reports for Parkinson's disease and MS, and they're examples of things we can take into consideration, really, to lower the hurdles and obstacles to study participation. Another important thing patients want sponsors to understand is the treatment burden, which applies to the dosage, the mixing, matching, side effects, on and off times, shuffling through treatment options to address specific symptoms, the timing and frequency of treatments, and really the out-of-pocket expense for uncovered treatments. And again, this is taken from FDA Voice of Patient information. So a final point to make in understanding the patients is with respect to their interest in what's going on scientifically and contributing to the overall scientific understanding, which really underscores an opportunity for clinical research sponsors to be involved in this education process. So some examples are that patients are interested in the progress of ongoing research, the identification of predictive biomarkers, improved knowledge to drive disease prevention, earlier diagnosis, and disease management, emerging research in stem cells and regenerative medicine, and better pain classification, understanding the types of pain and the intensity and the kinds of discomfort. So what can patients better understand from sponsors? What they can understand or get from sponsors is really the opportunity that sponsors have to provide meaningful information back to patients. And so, some examples of this would be the information about trials, or making it easy for potential study participants to find trials, not necessarily reinventing the wheel, because there are resources already out there who are actively engaged, third parties, and partnering with advocacy. And in many cases, it really may mean just being a partner or participating and expanding on these partnerships. Also, sponsors can really be at the forefront of the patient education on the clinical research process, such as educating on the reasons for conducting clinical research and what are the actual objectives of the research. And then what was learned in terms of the outcome of the study. So, consistently we see that clinical trial participations, they really want to know what happened, and they want to know, how they did. So according to an article, Getz and Hallonen, a significant number of study participants in a given trial report that they didn't learn about specific results. And this is really something that study staff sees as adversely affecting their patient relationships. So this is an opportunity. So what sponsors are doing, they're really starting to do well at improving communication. So here's a summary of some objectives for better patient communication. Improve the clinical study participation through active engagement with patient communities. Strengthen partnerships with the patient, the caregiver, and the advocacy through education and support. They can obtain patient input to drive better design of drug studies, of course. Improve the patient experience during the study. Support patients' health by providing information specific to the patients, for example, the personal medical information, and then provide findings to patients about the results of the study in a way that they can actually understand. Secondly, working to better understand the patient needs. So patients are being heard through active interaction with advocacy and advisory boards to gain valuable insights for protocol design. Also outcome measures and tools and technology to support the patient interaction over the course of the trial. And they're being heard both in passive interaction like social listening and data science, and then creating insights, journey maps. There's case studies and a variety of new technology and services aimed at study improvement based on a more holistic understanding of the patient's experience. And so adaptive design, patient apps, concierge, virtual assistants, and travel and reimbursement services are some examples. But despite the flurry of activity, patient engagement is still in a state of experimentation to a degree because it's still being shaped by several dynamic and simultaneous triggers, and that makes it somewhat of a moving target. So like there's increasing ability to understand the patient experience through big data and social listening, so that's a changing opportunity. There's also advances in digital medicine and the ability to collect patient data through connected devices. There are general insights that are being gained about customer satisfaction, what it means, and the economics around loyalty. There's also increasing understanding on the patient's side of disease science, the ongoing progress, the predictive biomarkers, and this is due in part or perhaps a lot on just the increasing information findability. And there's a patient desire for personal empowerment and disease management, which includes holistic approaches to health. And then finally, increased communication within the patient communities themselves through social media and closed kinds of discussion groups. And they're sharing information. So it's important to pay attention to this. But as a result, the industry is being shaped by patterns of experimentation and to some degree follow the leader. And sponsors are struggling to understand the return on investment in a way that can be understood in financial terms, which of course can be impaired by some of the awareness limitations which we mentioned earlier. So flexibility is really what's needed to identify and sort of differentiate the enduring needs from passing fads. But in short, everyone is really trying to figure things out, and there has not been a massive crossing the chasm in practice, although it is widely understood that pharma needs to be patient-focused. So it seems people know that, and patient centricity is obviously a very popular concept right now. So the approach to improvement. So this involves really, from our perspective, getting the right people and communicating, doing what's best for patients. Not always what everyone else is doing, although obviously there are certainly things to be gained from looking at trends, and then executing and measuring and improving. So here are some things that kind of to start with around people and communication. So involving the people who really care about the subject. It helps if people leading patient communication efforts really have a passion for this. And so it's good to ensure that whoever's leading or driving patient communication has a desire to communicate with patients to understand their experiences and needs and to apply this understanding during or in the clinical study patient interaction. The other point I wanted to make is just considering what we know. The availability of information on the patient experience from big data and social listening is pretty astounding, but it's not always necessary to spend lots of money to get meaningful insights. A lot can be understood, for example, by drawing on personal experience, and there are the individuals everywhere in our lives who have been directly impacted by illness, either as patients or caregivers. And then communicating goals clearly is also important. Clarity and focus really goes a long way toward achieving results, particularly in this area, because it's not fully understood or valued by all the stakeholders. And I'm thinking, internally with respect to that. So you really have to develop a vision, drive organizational thinking, establish goals that address real study challenges and are measurable, attainable, time-bound, et cetera, and probably you want to start with where the need is the greatest, such as a study with problematic adherence or where the site visits are posing particular challenges to patients, and then building on that. And once that's done, really monitoring and evaluating efforts, identifying the synergies that may be occurring or synergistic opportunities, let's say, between patient engagement initiatives, and then prepare to stop doing things that aren't working. And then, where possible, form partnerships with stakeholders to achieve the goals. So as stated earlier, we are spending a lot of money, and technology is being built for trial participants, but it's not clear that patients are always entirely on board with moving away from the critical kinds of personal relationships, particularly between the provider and the patient. So companies are looking to improve communication through patient engagement should consider how to achieve these goals based on obviously what the patients prefer and their actual habits, not necessarily copying what's happening everywhere else or somewhere else in the industry. And then there are methods for exploring the questions of what to do using prototyping and simple user experience experiments with patients to better understand the value of different approaches. And this can be done in a more iterative kind of process. And we think really a small investment up front can lead to insights which then can sort of drive course correction and refining of the approach, and really may lead to major breakthroughs in understanding or stop ill-advised investment before it's made. So to illustrate some of the advantages of a more iterative course correcting approach, I wanted to just kind of think about this marshmallow challenge, and I believe this was created by Peter Skillman, who's a designer and international leader of user experience design teams, and he has a background in mobile operating systems. But basically, the idea behind this challenge is that participants are broken into teams of 4, and they're given 18 to build the tallest freestanding structure using spaghetti, tape, string, and a marshmallow. And what really was found is that on average, it took about 20 minutes for the teams to make the structure. I think what's interesting is business school students of these different groups did the worst. Lawyers did a little better, but if you look to the right of that, you see that kindergartners actually did very well. In fact, the only group that did better than kindergartners was architects and engineers, who I think we would expect to do well at this particular kind of task. So what I think is insightful is you look at kind of how the kindergartners approached the task. And so we can see here the marshmallow represents the number of times in the row where the group actually attempted to place the marshmallow on top, which is weighted so that it causes instability in the structure. So when comparing, for example, business students who didn't do so well and kindergarten students who did pretty well, you can see that the kindergarten students actually attempted to put the marshmallow on top more frequently, and as a result, they course corrected. They made changes along the way, and in the end, it produces a much more stable structure and a better result. And this is what we mean really by that sort of iterative course correcting. So the approach to better patient engagement and communication should at least initially be based on factors that are organization and patient community specific. So that would involve really starting to move the needle by assessing where the current opportunities are. And this really involves the identification of pain points and areas for improvement, then focus on areas for investment, resource, time, and money, the quick wins, the bang for the buck, and as well as the long-term strategic kinds of opportunities, and then the opportunities for organizational learning or desirable kinds of learning effects, and then develop patient engagement approach, which involves the processes and technologies, the services, the organizational change, the coordination of internal functions, and the related change management, and then finally moving to execution, implementation with that measurement piece to get a clearer picture of what this return on investment really means internally or in a more organization or patient or disease specific sense, and then there's an opportunity to refine and iterate. So this concludes our presentation, and if we have some remaining time, we can take some questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Amiri. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Perfect. So we had a couple questions come in. We'll get through them, and please, everyone, feel free to use the GoToMeeting interface to ask any additional questions. So the first question we received was, what functions need to be involved in the communicating with patients?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I think like for that question, it's really specific to the organization, and it depends, on where the organization is starting in terms of level of adoption. I mean, typically it would include like study managers, operations, patient advocacy. If that exists, the teams that are involved in enrollment, for example, clinical development, and if there's no kind of clear formal patient engagement body, this could be a sort of dotted line model, and then it depends, again, what's right for the specific organization, and certainly then you expand from there. And there are many other groups that could be involved. It really just depends on the scope. Any other questions?
So sorry.
Or does any other panelists want to add to that?
Looks like we're good on that one. Amiri, sorry about that. I thought I unmuted myself and I did not. What are the compliance requirements around communicating with patients during clinical trials?
Well, this really, from my understanding, it varies by country. Definitely the FDA is looking for sponsors to incorporate the patient voice early in the process, really at the program or disease level, and for developers to really explore, areas of unmet need, develop outcome measures, and include the patient voice in sort of the benefits and risk assessments. In the UK, HRA really has led the way in developing guidance for lay summaries, for example, as a standard for more generalized adoption. And really there's anticipation that in the US this will be required in the future, and so there's preparation for that. And then of course there are industry groups that are trying to get involved really to help define some of this, like Harvard MRCT and Transcelerate, who are looking to develop guidelines for communicating information to patients where the standards aren't clear or missing around how that should be done.
Okay, great. Next up we have, what are the regulatory constraints around communicating with patients?
Well, that's really evolving to support the patient needs. Right now, I mean, what we're seeing is it really kind of centers around avoidance of being, promoting or to patients, and that really sort of guides or constrains the relationship that sponsors really can have. For example, some countries, the sponsors aren't able to provide even site names. So really, it kind of falls around this line of being promotional.
All right, great. Next up we have, what are the most valuable things we can do organizationally? The low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, I think really starting, again with the mindset set of like what is the value of this, and then in relation to very specific problems, for like if you're trying to reduce the number of protocol amendments, to the point earlier, they can be very expensive. Then you would want to certainly involve patients in input early on that would drive the protocol design, using, for example, boards or through protocol simulation. And if you're having problems, with patients dropping out, then you start developing a measurement, program to understand the reasons, and then employing solutions. And things like the concierge services we talked about before. It's an example that you might want to use in a situation where there's a smaller patient population that it's more complex, getting to and from sites, and because of travel arrangements or geographic distribution. So again, it really falls around looking specifically what the challenges are in the program.
All right, great. And then this is the last question we've received. If we don't receive any more, we will end the presentation after this. So finally, we have, how do we prioritize implementation within our organization?
Yeah, I'd say this is similar. Really just starting with the mindset of what is the value of this based on specific problems, and then identifying what making an impact really means, whether it's patient satisfaction, the reduced amendments, or just saving money, looking at the cost to implement, and then looking at it from a level impact, maybe like versus effort in terms of money or complexity or time.
All right, great. So if no one else has any more questions, we are going to end the presentation there for today. I'd like to thank everyone for joining. We will be posting the webinar on the Pharmica website, and I will send out an email notifying all of you when it's up. So if you enjoyed the content and know anyone else in your workplace or network who might benefit from seeing it, please share it. If anyone's interested in learning more about Pharmica and the work we do with patient centricity or any of our other areas, please reach out to myself or Amiri, and don't forget to check back on the Pharmica website for future webinars and conferences that we hold throughout the year. So again, thank you all for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.